Thank you. Unless there's any last minute fiddling that anyone needs to do, I'm going to start. I will call this meeting of the Solid Waste Special Service District number 1 to order this Monday, September 20th at 4:03 p.m. Present are board members Mary McGann, Kevin Fitzgerald, Chad Harris, Diane Ackerman, and myself, Kaylin Jones, and board members Evan Tyrrell, Jessica Thacker, Christopher Scoville, and LJ Blackburn. First order of business is citizens input. Is there anyone waiting in the wings? Sounds like no. Any written citizens input received? Nope. All right. Next up, approval of the August 24th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve August 24th, 2021 minutes as presented for the September 20th, 2021 board meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Kevin. Any further discussion? Evan?
There are no minutes.
Oh.
They are not ready. So we're going to work on being more timely on those, but they are not prepared nor in the board packet for this meeting.
All right. Thank you. Would anyone care to table that?
I'll rescind my second. I'll make a motion to table the acceptance of the minutes for 2020 August 2021 until next board meeting.
Thank you, Kevin.
I second.
Thank you, Diane. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Hi.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Now I'm going to be second guessing myself. Is this also a decoy? Is B a decoy or?
No, that's
okay.
that is a separate attachment. It's not in the board packet, but it is in an email that was sent to the board.
All right. So next item is approval of expenditures for the month of August 2021.
And I got that.
I'll make a motion to approve the expenditures for the month of August 2021 in the amount of $311,321.28.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Diane. Is there anything staff would like to expound upon or questions or comments from the board? Seeing none. Oh,
I have one question. It's an easy question, I think. Evan, the expenditure to JUB Engineering for the stormwater is for a SWIP. What facility is getting the new stormwater plan, or what's that for?
That's for the transfer station. So as part of the acquisition, the existing SWIP was non-transferable. So we've entered into an agreement with an engineering firm, it's JUB Engineers, and they're basically billing us on a monthly basis. I have a meeting with them tomorrow to discuss their progress. They've already done the site walk and they've drafted a preliminary SWIP for the site.
Okay, that's kind of what I suspected. I just wanted to ask. Thanks.
And then, yeah, I mean, a lot's changed. Our expenditures have grown. The auto paychecks, that's the kind of cumulative payroll amounts. So it's not broken up by individual person. And then towards the bottom, obviously, we had some transfers to our PCIF. So we excluded that from an expenditure and shown that as a transfer. So our total expenses for the month was the 311, 321, 20.
Evan, is there a kind of a filter on your microphone? Sometimes you come through really garbled, not really clear.
I'll check my settings.
I was just wondering where your microphone was at. You can maybe, make sure there's nothing in front of it.
Right. Is it better now or no?
That actually is better.
Better, yes?
Yes,
Okay.
All right.
I have another option. I can try. This is the microphone with my new camera. Is that better or no?
No,
No?
No. You're just a little deeper, but not necessarily clearer, but we can understand you.
How about now? I switched it back. Better?
better.
Okay. Okay.
All right. There's no further questions or comments. I will call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
aye,
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Reports, district staff reports. Evan,
Yes, so mine will be somewhat short. I just have a list of what activities have been performed, or mostly meetings. So on the 25th of August, I met with the Grand County Planning Department. I met John Gunther, who appears to be a great asset for the county in that role. They're discussing the general plan for the county with multiple departments. So I met with them as a preliminary kind of meeting to talk about all things solid waste. September 1st, we held an all staff safety and team building meeting that went pretty well. We need to hold them more frequently and make sure we prioritize those. We haven't really had one in a little bit, so that was a good meeting nonetheless. September 7th, I did attend and present to the Grand County Commission regarding our 2022 financial request, but also our presentation on the 2021 information for what they requested. I did send that entire packet to the board just for your reference. If there's any question on that, let me know. Met with the health department again on September 10th. LJ went with me, which was good, to discuss more about WAG bags. So apparently there's some larger motivations to identify a solution for these locally, but also the state of Utah is putting a campaign out basically saying, throw your WAG bags in the regular trash. So there's some disconnect there.
So the state of Utah, so I heard that right. The state of Utah is encouraging people to throw it in the trash.
Yes.
Who's doing that?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it probably has to do with their environmental department or maybe the state health department. I can find out. I met with Ginger Allen, Orion Rogers, and Jonathan Dutro to discuss this. So since the last discussion on this and the article in the Sun News, there have been improvements for what our drivers have and have not seen in the containers, but people are routinely bringing them to the transfer station for disposal. So this is a unique issue in this community, and it's largely based on our collection methods and our rear load trucks that are somewhat old fashioned, but they are effective. But for these larger municipalities and cities, they use a different style of trucks that don't have these kind of rupturing hazards directly to employees and so forth. So we're working on that. We've identified some plans and some potential solutions, and that is still an ongoing discussion. September 15th, I attended the Thompson Springs community meeting. That was a large meeting with the health department, surveying, planning and zoning, code enforcement. There's still a lot of ongoing motivations to move Thompson Springs into a more compliant and appropriately zoned community. My purpose of attending there was twofold. One is to discuss a future cleanup event. However, that discussion has kind of been postponed. My primary reason was to discuss with the residents the opportunity and our proposal to provide garbage collection services to that community. For quite some time, the materials have been leaving. They're getting collected by a entity outside of Grand County, and their trash is going to landfills outside of Grand County. So we're trying to pick up, provide their service so we can ultimately promote, but also support, or more effectively justify supporting cleanup events in Thompson in the future once a larger scale event does occur. So that went rather well. I mean, I've got 8 people who signed up as being interested. And I think my goal is to transition that community to our service come hopefully in January of next year. So I'll keep the board posted on that. One of the main managers of the RV park there was supposed to call me this week also to discuss options and pricing. And then on the 17th, there was another meeting with Grand County Planning Department on the general plan. This was a larger group of internal stakeholders, and there's some action items for each department or entity and to help with the general plan for the county. And one thing about Thompson Springs also is that currently we don't have the containers to support that service other than the poly carts. But we did place our larger dumpster container order that was approved during the last meeting. However, the lead time and the estimated ship date is not until the month of December for those containers. So we'll make way with what we have for now, and it should be okay. So
is that to support the cleanup or to support regular service? Sorry.
Regular service.
Okay.
A lot of them use 2-yard and 4-yard trash dumpsters, but I've also offered them polycart service with the regular 96-gallon cans as well.
Yeah.
Evan, what is the majority number looking like in Thompson Springs? I mean, you said you had 8 people that were interested. What's the majority up there?
So most residents share containers. So they basically have a 4-yard container that 2, 3, or 4 residents use, and they just split the cost. So it really depends. And I did give them pricing, with an inflation factor given our current rates because of the distance to and from Thompson being a very remote community, and just a round trip itself is close to 2 hours. So, but we would be able to direct haul the material to Klondike landfill on the way back in, and then get better volume to weight conversion ratios and so forth. So I think Chris and I ran some numbers, and just picking up Thompson, but also the UDOT facilities, the rest stops and the UDOT yard would equate to around roughly $20,000 of revenue on an annual basis. But also, keep things local, support local jobs, and keep money circulating in Grand County as opposed to leaving the county.
So the majority of the waste would go right to Klondike. It would not come into the transfer station, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And is that 20,000 gross or net?
That'd be gross.
Right. But the rates out in the county would cover the transportation.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Great.
It'd be a one day per week collection service. We'd have one day, there would be the service out in Thompson.
Uh-huh. Very good.
Mm-hmm. And then we can look at recycling in the future if there is interest. But to send a recycle truck for 2 or 3 residents that want recycling, that's would be a tough thing to do. So.
Yep.
And then just a few upcoming events. The fall voucher cleanup program at Moab Landfill, which I also expressed and provided handouts at the Thompson meeting, is coming up October 25th through November 6th, up to 2 cubic yards of free disposal, yard waste, green waste, C&D debris, and then we also still are using the tires. So up to 8 standard size tires are also acceptable under the voucher program. And then tentatively, we do have a second House of Hazardous Waste event bookmarked for Saturday, November 6th. We'll talk about that later in the meeting. And then November 13th, we're planning some America Recycles Day events at the Recycling Center. Primarily right now, we are planning for another Cash for Cans event where residents can bring bags of aluminum cans, we weigh them, and they get paid 30 cents per pound. And typically that's been sponsored by other entities. Moab Solutions, Poison Spider Bicycles did one, and then Bird & Company sponsors also in the past. So when we have a petty cash fund with remaining funds for that. So if we don't get sponsors, it's not a huge expense for us, but these are also special events that I want to discuss also later in the meeting. So that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Looks like no questions. So do other board members have things they want to present? I mean, not board members, sorry, staff.
Unmute. I mean, you're gonna have to mute them.
LJ, yeah, let me.
All right.
Drain office space.
Whoop.
I just wanted to update a little bit. I have been working on a script for our phone message so that we can alleviate some of the phone calls and streamline them. We're still kind of reviewing that, and we will hopefully have that set into place by the end of this month. We have hired an office assistant, and that person will start next month. We have a desk ordered and a phone ordered for the new office assistant. And so that's all coming into place. The other thing that I've started to look at, and Savannah's been helping me do some research on, is a different type of software other than TerraTrash that will help streamline all the and let us put like the landfill as well as trash collection all into one specific software. But that's still a ways down the road, but just something that we've started to look at. So.
Great, sounds good. Any questions for LJ? Any, Jessica or Chris, you have anything to report? Fine either way.
I just got something real quick. I think obviously not with this board packet, but starting next board packet, I'll probably be adding a written component with the board packet that kind of tries, hopefully stays on a higher level with the operations. And the goal would be to try to kind of share a vision with the board as we move forward towards budget season. And this kind of came up in my mind with, I don't think it was 2 board meetings ago, where it seemed like the board was kind of unclear of some of the things that we wanted to get. And I felt like that because we have a larger plan that we're trying to move forward with all this, the money that we have for the capital improvements and stuff. And I think it's important for the board to kind of share our vision and join in on that vision. So starting a next board meeting, I'll be adding a written component to the board packet.
Thank you, Chris. That sounds really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
Chris, how's your transition going with the employees, staff, and morale, stuff like that?
It's definitely a challenge. I think there's going to be a period of successes and failures as we move forward, but you know, just like everything else in life, you just have to keep moving forward and do the best that you can do.
I appreciate your attitude and work on that.
That's right. Hang in there. Hang in there.
We're on it. Chris and I have been communicating extremely frequently, and we're identifying plans and strategies to correct deficiencies, to say it one way. So.
Understood. Thank you. Jessica, anything you want to report out on?
Yes, I have a couple things as well. So the biggest thing is I submitted a grant application through the ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act, that was released for future or for further COVID-19 funding. And I submitted for $250,000 for the establishment of a permanent household hazardous waste collection and temporary storage facility here at Community Recycle Center. We get a lot of questions from people asking why we don't hold these events more often. We get a lot of expressed frustration from folks having to hold on to their waste for a year, sometimes even longer, especially if they've just barely missed the event and they've already been holding on to it for a long time. So this is something I believe would be extremely helpful and very beneficial to our community. So here's hoping that it gets granted to us. Couple other things. We had a volunteer group this past week from the Sully Hill Society who were associated with the Great American Rover Rally event. We had about 9 people come out and collect 15 bags of trash out at Klondike. So thank you to the Sully Hill Society, and thank you to Sarah for helping.
What was the society again? What did you call it?
Sully Hill.
What?
Sully Hull. It's
Sully?
Yeah, it's Sully Hull.
What are they?
They're the group that organizes four-wheeling events around the country, apparently.
Oh, four-wheeling events. Oh, somebody.
Yeah. So thank you to them and thank you to Sarah for facilitating that. Next week, I have tentatively scheduled a trip up to Salt Lake City to finally get exempt plates for all of our fleet vehicles. So we will no longer be driving around with old plates. So everything will be updated and we'll finally get on track for compliance with DOT. So that's good. I updated my records officer certification, so I'm good for the next year. And last but not least, Diane is holding her with the Utah Native Plant Society. Did I get the name right? Okay. A seed swap workshop this weekend. I will be assisting with that, and I'm very excited. I'm always down for more seeds. For anybody that's been in the office, you've seen my small garden, so I'm actually quite excited for this event. But that's pretty much all I've got other than just plugging away at work.
Sounds good.
Yeah, great. That sounds like a lot. Evan.
If I could just clarify a few quick things, sorry, and Jessica presented 100% appropriately. I just wanted to make sure a couple items aren't misinterpreted. So the grant that was submitted for the HHW was for the establishment of a facility. In the event that we get awarded that grant, there would be a lot more planning and identification of how that service would be managed, and the frequency of drop-offs and potential fees and all those types of things. Obviously, staff training, safety would be a huge component of that as well. So, and to my knowledge, the Sully Hull group, they've been coming to Moab for quite some time. They've worked historically with Moab Solutions, and Sarah with Moab Solutions was basically offered them to help us as the volunteer event. So I think Jessica was getting to thanking Sarah, but I would also just want to say thank you very much to Moab Solutions and Sarah to offering their support to us. And then finally, so the DOT exempt plates. So we're not running the vehicles illegally. So we're still running under the monument waste license plates, and they're still registered under monument waste. So not only until a few weeks ago did we receive all of the remaining titles from monument waste. So monument waste, as part of the acquisition and our purchase, they had loans, and those titles, didn't receive them until late last month, early this month. And I met with Dan just a few weeks ago to get everything together. So now we have all the signed titles. So Jessica will be going to Salt Lake to re-register the vehicles to the solid waste district. We'll get government exempt plates, which we won't have to pay annual fees. And then we'll be able to update our DOT number and get everything 100% under the district name. So definitely a long and tedious process, and Jessica's been managed that very well, and we've gone as expeditiously as we can in transitioning all those items over. So
Great. Thank you all. Sounds like some great things happening. Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, we have board reports. Who has something to report? Kevin.
I just wanted to follow through with Evan on the Rocks, Scots on the Rocks event. We talked a little bit about their dumpster situation, the cans that were there. How did that turn out, Evan? What happened on the collection of the garbage from Scots on the Rocks?
So, yeah, so there was a communication breakdown, on both fronts. So the city, in permitting the event, requires the event coordinator to identify their plan for refuse service. They had called us a few months prior, and there was just no follow through. I think that there was the event was, unfortunately, I think the coordination didn't go through as it should have. So on Sunday we did deliver a 18-yard closed top roll-off container. We were able to get one there on Sunday. And we're going to be identifying strategies to mitigate these hiccups in the future. So we did get it taken care of, although not the most ideal, but we will be addressing and identifying how to mitigate those types of hiccups in the future. So.
Was there any recycling that took place? Did they honor the recycling cans? What happened on that?
So I'm not sure about that specifically. I know that the city requested that we conduct a special pickup on Friday of last week. The majority of the containers were not out for the collection. I think half of them were picked up, and the next scheduled pickup, the ballpark is serviced on Wednesdays. So I think it'll really depend on how well the containers were placed or paired, because there's 6 recycling containers and 6 regular trash containers there. So we'll have to see. I think they've cleaned it up now. I've been curious myself and maybe kind of cruising by there over the next day or two to see how everything looks. So.
Did they ever contact you back? I mean, you made 2 or 3 phone calls to contact someone from the city. Did they ever get back with you, or what was that kind of left out in the lurch?
So yeah, I had called Carly Castle on Saturday. I called Marcy Mason, and I tried to get a hold of the Public Works Department. Carly Castle ended up getting back in touch with me later that afternoon.
Okay.
And then the event organizer for the event called me Sunday morning, where we finally squared everything away. So.
Okay, just checking. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin and Evan. Anyone else? Diane, did you want to report on this upcoming event?
Yes, I just wanted to add to Jessica's excitement about receiving some free seeds. And I just want the board to know that I have, and therefore we have identified a way to utilize and divert waste from the waste stream by way of some new signs. We're going to update our plant ID tags. And so I want folks to, number one, know that we're looking for help, for someone to help us put the lettering on these signs. And we're going to be doing some of that on Saturday, but also in a week or two, just be on the lookout. I want you to look at them and see what they look like, and see if you can figure out where they came from and what they were originally, because they're really cool. I like them.
Great.
And that's it.
Sounds good.
I didn't get the time, and it's this Saturday, the exchange, right?
Right. It's Saturday from 10 a.m. until noon. We're going to have a garden tour at 10:15. So it'll kind of give you a story of how this came to be, and some of the plants, just kind of very informal. And then we'll just be looking at the people who are supposed to bring seeds. We're going to be exchanging seeds amongst ourselves, and there will be some planting of seeds in the garden too at that time.
Sounds great. Thanks for helping make that happen.
This is the garden that's along the fence line there by the recycle center.
Right.
Great.
Okay, so not directly solid waste related, but Utah Climate Week is September 21st to October 1st. It's dovetailing with Moab Science Week, which comes next week. And there's a slate of events for Climate Week, and this has been put together by the city sustainability director. And you can check out the schedule of events at the City of Moab Sustainability Department webpage. And I was at a Colorado Association of Ski Towns meeting 2 weeks ago, and one of the presentations was on Telluride's disposable plastic bag ban, which they've had in place for nearly a decade, and which sounds like they've had, it's been successful there. But one of the interesting things was just the conversation that it spawned about measures that other places are taking in terms of, say, banning styrofoam takeout containers. And City of Steamboat has a section of the Yampa River that runs through town, which is popular for tubing. And this summer they're doing a pilot program where they banned all disposable beverage containers because they were just tired of the trash and the waste. They're not enforcing it this year. It's more of at the educational stage, but interesting to see what communities slightly further on the timeline of waste reduction are doing. So unless Chad or Mary have anything, we will move on. Next up is old business. Possible action item, adoption of a resolution amending section 6A of the district's bylaws to require only one board member signature for the issuance of checks, etc. Evan, you want to lead us in this discussion?
Yes, sure. Jessica, did Doug try to join the meeting yet? Or so we're supposed to be someone joining to support this discussion item. Let me just verify my email real quick. So I'm jumping into my email quick, but without Doug, I feel like we may be hard pressed to move forward with anything. I requested between 4:30 and 5 p.m. He said he can join. He'll be out of the outset with another audit, but should be able to join around 4:30. And I did send him the meeting information, but I've not heard back today. So he may or may not join, but just if you can keep an eye for someone that joins, and maybe we can perhaps move the discussion. I guess we can. Maybe we should postpone this item and go back to it, perhaps.
Should we table it and see if he shows up later
Yes, I think we should.
rather than postponing it? And you don't have to, I found out you don't have to take a motion to table anything.
The chair can just unilaterally table it since we're going to reconsider it in the same meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because I moved the agenda around a lot in our last commission meeting to try to accommodate the people that were there for only one item.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I found out that you can just say, I'm going to table item. You'd say, I'm going to table item E until this person, arrives. That's all you have to say.
Okay, I'm going to table item E until this person arrives.
Yeah.
Next up, we have new business. Possible action item, approval to move forward with the planning and execution of a second annual Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day at the Community Recycle Center on November 6th, 2021. Evan, do you want to present on this before?
Yes. So there has been a lot of ongoing interest, phone calls, people that come into our offices asking what to do with old gasoline and just various household chemicals. A lot of people, I think, missed the March 6th event this year. We've really tried to enhance our advertising for these events, but it still hasn't kind of caught on. But also recall that we did cancel the HHW event in 2020 as a result of COVID-19 and perceived budget shortfalls. So the event this year for the one-day drop-off event did cost us approximately $13,000. I've excluded from these costs. So during these events, we also provide all of the batteries and other universal wastes that the recycle center has collected throughout the past year or duration between the events. So there were more costs than just this, but this, what I presented in page 27 of the board packet, reflects the total cost to the district for the external service from Veolia Environmental Services. So it was approximately $13,000. And then I did have them provide their pricing, which is contained below page 27 of the board packet. It's a bit complicated to understand, but nothing has changed in a major way on the pricing. And we're just hoping to, hopefully moving forward, make this a biannual event as opposed to just once a year, and really get some effective advertising and getting the word out for these events so we can make them more successful and divert more materials and getting less calls throughout the year for what to do with these materials. So I do have a November 6th is bookmarked with Veolia in the event that we decide to move forward with this event this year. Second event.
So this grant that Jessica's applying for would actually help with some type of building structure to actually hold and maintain this, so they could drop it off and then pay a small fee for doing that, and then we could have the collection all at once. Is that the plan?
To some degree, yes. So it would be a environmentally controlled infrastructure for us to allow for intake of HHW throughout the year, identifying what fees we would charge for residents or out-of-county residents or commercial entities. And then we would have to train our staff to safely store it, label it, all those types of things, and then find the best way to appropriately facilitate the disposition of the materials. So whether or not we would call someone to pick it up, or if we ultimately, I think the grant, it actually pitched for us to have a small box truck that we would actually haul it ourselves to a disposition location. Chris actually has his hazmat endorsement as a CDL driver, but there's a lot of regulatory complexities with this as well. So this would all be kind of, but that would be the goal, to allow for continuous intake of these materials year round, probably on a once a month or twice a month perhaps basis. So.
Kaylin, would you like a motion?
Yes, I guess so.
Okay. I make a motion for the district staff to move forward with the planning and execution of a second annual Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day at the Community Recycle Center on November 6, 2021, and the amount not to exceed $20,000.
Thank you, Mary.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kevin. Any further discussion?
I think this is a good idea.
I agree
It's a
completely.
real good idea.
Seeing none, no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Item G, discussion of special events planning, including intergovernmental and interagency coordination and collaboration to enhance waste diversion and related sustainability education efforts.
Yes, so I may kind of jump around here. I haven't really effectively formulated how I want to discuss this item. Actually, we just got Doug just joined us as well. So,
okay. Yep, I will table item G and proceed with item E, on a resolution to amend the district's bylaw to require only one board member to sign for checks, etc.
So I guess I'll kind of introduce this topic. So Doug, I think what you're a managing partner with Snow and Rich and Marsing, is that your correct title or?
Hello there, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, so Evan, have you talked to them as far as what you would like me to go over?
No, so I was going to introduce the topic, but I wanted to also introduce yourself first. So
Okay,
you're a what, managing partner with Snow and Rich and Marsing?
I am one of the partners that with SMU and Rich and Marsing. We have 3 of us and been with the firm for, boy, almost 40 years. So a little while.
Snow is our third-party auditor, just to point that out. So we've had
Yeah.
some discussions on this topic, and you know, Doug, we've grown substantially with our recent acquisition of the Monument Waste Services operations, and it's not always the case where 2 board members can come and sign checks for outgoing payments on behalf of the district. So we've kind of discussed some items. I have informed the board that it's not advisable that I be designated a check signer. But so at this point, I've drafted a resolution with reference material behind that, but that ultimately would modify our bylaws to allow for only one board member to sign off on checks, as opposed to requiring 2 signatures per every check. So, and per the resolution, it's not saying we're only gonna have one board member sign, but in the event that 2 board members are not readily available, then we would only absolutely need 1 signature per check going out for payment. So, and I've not talked to you, Doug, about that. This is just a draft resolution for the board to consider, but I wanted to absolutely get your input on this item first.
And I did take the time, Evan, to read through that resolution. And the way I read it, I think it would be a good resolution. I only have one little maybe additional input, and that is I would include in that resolution that if you have an expenditure that's over a certain dollar threshold, I don't know exactly what that amount would be, but a certain dollar threshold that would require 2 signatures on those checks. I see that in a lot of resolutions that even though an entity or an individual might be able to issue a check with only 1 signature on it, realizing again that the board is approving those expenditures. Some entities just have a signature plate that they use, but they make sure that authorization is being done by the board and that is well documented. But they also have that if there is an expenditure that's over a certain dollar threshold, and that's been around $2,000, that it would require 2 signatures on those checks.
So it seems like the account from which most checks are written has 2 signature lines on the checks. If there was only, and previously we've talked about having a staff person sign the check if only 1 board member is available, but then in recent exchanges, it seems like the obvious candidates are too close to the process to play that role in terms of separation of authority. So I'm just wondering, if we only have 1 signature on a 2-line signature line check, is that going to create problems at the receiving end or with our bank? Or is there a staff person who could play that role at those times?
If your policy indicates that you only are required to have 1 signature below a certain threshold, you can still have 2 signature lines on that check and only have 1 signature on that check. And I know that we tend to hope and believe that a bank is going to look to whether a check is signed or not. That does not happen.
It doesn't.
As much as we would like that to happen, it does not happen. So only having 1 signature on a check will not create any problems. I don't believe it will create any problems. We've seen as auditors checks that have gone through without any signatures on those lines at all. So I'm not concerned about that we have 2 signature lines with only 1 line being signed.
Thank you. Doug, based on your experience with other similar entities, either in terms of the type of business or the size, do you have any recommendations as to what an appropriate dollar limit would be?
Well, as I indicated, I do have a couple of entities that have the $2,000 threshold. I think with your situation, and Evan, you can probably speak to this a little bit more. I don't know how many checks that you have on a regular basis that are over $2,000 or even maybe $1,000. The lower the threshold, of course, is going to help with controls and internal controls, but sometimes we might be getting into too many checks where we get back to the same issue, the same problem that Evan has been addressing and still cannot locate 2 individuals to come and sign a check that needs to be issued.
So I would say that 2,000 would not be a high enough threshold. You know, Doug, with our recent growth, we're going to be looking at like a $3.5 to $4 million annual budget moving forward, and I'd say at least half of our checks on average, maybe a little bit less, would be over $2,000. But that also, you know, some payroll checks too being over that amount.
And this would not be payroll check related. So payroll checks, and again, your policy, I think, needs to address, that was the other thing, is it needs to address what you do with payroll checks. And does it have to follow the same processes and procedures? And my recommendation would be is that payroll checks can have 1 signature, again, as long as they are authorized and that is well documented by the board.
Right, so all of our check reviews, our payroll checks are direct deposit or ACH. But we also have, you know, like for instance, our last payroll, we had a $14,000 ACH going towards the federal tax kind of portion of everything, and roughly a $11,000 check going towards a URS ACH payments. So the payroll, but we have like, so the clerk is the first kind of signatory line. Then it comes to me, and then I sign off, and then the board members sign off on the approval stamp, but also on the checks when there are physical checks.
What does the board feel comfortable with the threshold?
Yeah, well, Evan, what do you feel comfortable with the threshold? Hi, Doug. How you doing? Good to see you.
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good.
You know, I guess our idea on this is to help to streamline the check review and being able to make payments for, you know, accounts payable items. You know, I think in any type of check, it's going to kind of hamstring us to get the payments out. But I think a $5,000 threshold would be suitable, but we would have to hold other checks. For instance, our PTIF deposits, our fueling, Reinhardt or Kellerstrasse is now Reinhardt Oil. We pay, you know, more than probably $5,000 per 2-week cycle towards fueling expenses. So, and that one's a critical one that we have to pay timely for those types of expenses as well. So I guess it's kind of a tough call, I guess, on the spot as well. It sounds like we might need to just further evaluate this and you know, Doug, the original thought was, again, to help kind of streamline this, and obviously, you know, me being a signatory is by no means, you know, an appropriate approach at this time. So there's definitely some other situations to evaluate.
How many board members currently do you have that are check signers?
We all are.
And we still have difficulty in getting 2 individuals to sign those checks.
How
Well, Doug,
often?
one of us lives in Castle Valley, so she's quite hesitant to be around to sign checks. However, I wonder if there's going to be 1, 2, or 3, 5,000 or whatever limit we're talking every 2 weeks, what are we going to gain? Somebody's going to have to come in and sign those checks. 2 people, 2 board members will have to come in and sign those checks. So what are we gaining? I don't really get it.
And I am not telling you that you need to have that threshold. I'm just saying for better internal controls and to make sure that the board is identifying and reviewing and documenting those checks going out, that you've got to make sure that you have sufficient internal controls. Don't confuse what I'm saying, because I'm not telling you that you have to have that threshold. I'm just saying that there are entities that we audit that have that additional threshold when it comes to those checks. So I'm not telling that you have to. I'm just throwing that out, that probably ought to be something that you consider.
Doug, do they ever do like, I'm trying to, you know, because sometimes it's just that somebody's at a conference or something, but they could review everything if they had access to a computer. Because I know you did that, Evan.
No, that's in
So
no.
when you were on that conference, didn't you review everything when you were out of town?
No, that was not effective.
It wasn't? Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, never mind.
That's a lot of work in scanning documents, and there was a lot associated with that. So.
How often have I remember once quite a long time ago, we only had one person to sign. We ended up just signing with one board member. How often is it happening that we can't get 2 board members?
It hasn't lately, and that's one of the findings from our 2020 audit from SMUN, is that we weren't following our policy for signing checks. So we had a few occasions in 2020 where we just had one signature, but we wrote a memorandum for record, which I think probably wasn't the most effective nor filed where we could find it quickly. But still, it's not in our bylaws. It's not in one of our policies that is something that we can do. So.
And you know, Mary and the board, it's not so onerous for me to sign checks living in Castle Valley. It's just that we have been unable, or we maybe haven't even attempted to set up a more equitable schedule whereby if I know I have that responsibility, I will make myself be in town that day and you know, do other things on that day. So I think that's something that we haven't considered. I think my comment and experience has been that the board's not real good at communicating information about this in such that I know like a week ahead of time that I'm going to be needed to sign this check or scheduled in to sign this check, or, you know. And with 5 members, it seems as if it shouldn't be all that onerous if we could get ourselves so that we could schedule ourselves to come in on a basis where no one person is doing all the work. It's shared by all of us. Should think that we should be able to come up with something like that. Seems like it.
I think what Diane is saying is actually absolutely correct. And I'm wondering if, it seems to me that the problem we're facing is that we really only have like 2 days that we can sign checks from when the checks are ready until they have to be signed and distributed. Is there a way we could build a little bit more flexibility into that? Like maybe have checks be distributed a week afterward? We probably would take a one-time thing of everybody having to go 3 weeks between a paycheck versus 2 or something. Is there some other way we can do that to give us more time? Because it's usually just a matter of, we're asked to come in and sign checks, and we only have about less than 24 hours or less than 2 days in which we can do it.
Yeah, so
LJ, it seems like, we've attempted in the past to sign checks on Thursday, but it seems like with all the extra checks and such, that's almost becoming an impossibility. Should we just set it that it is always on Friday? Or is that a problem? Because I think that's part of the scheduling. If I have it on my calendar that I have to be at sign checks at between 8 and 12 on Friday, it helps me not all of a sudden double commit myself.
What I was saying, Mary, is that if checks need to be distributed on Friday, if they're ready a week before, then whoever is assigned to sign checks that week, we would have 7 days or 5 business days to go in and sign those checks. Because as it is now, we usually have Thursday afternoon and Friday morning to do it. So, but if we had more days, then I'd be more available to go in and sign. It's hard for me to come in on Fridays sometimes. So,
okay,
that's my point. And I don't know how exactly to go about getting to that point. And like one idea, and I don't know if this is a bad idea or not, but if we just one time we delay checks for a week, and then we'd be back on the 2-week cycle, but we'd have that week of, we'd still prepare checks at the same time. We'd have that whole week for getting signatures on those checks. Am I making any sense?
I think you're making very good sense, Chad. The thing that I know, LJ prepares this all at once, so that's a full packet. So when we come in, they want to get the checks out Friday afternoon, everything, it's kind of a timing thing. LJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I can see it as, is a timing thing. Then she can clear off her desk and have it done. It's just that timing getting in between Thursday and Friday.
Well, I think we can be flexible, and LJ can jump into it if she wants. She's asking me if I should answer or not, but I'll have to mute my computer again. So before the acquisition, we had the check review scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Historically, we had struggled to get everything ready and assembled in time. We've moved that to now Thursday afternoon, so have everything ready. But it's still, given the amount of growth and the amount of additional checks and payroll reviews that we have, we had 12 employees, now we're at 32 employees, or I think we're at 31 right now. So the amount of time it takes to review and prepare everything has increased dramatically. But we've been doing good at meeting that time period. Our trucks are ready by 4 p.m. Thursday, but people can also sign Thursday afternoon or Friday, ideally Friday morning, because we are hoping to provide pay stubs to all the staff members when they leave the office for the weekend. So they have their pay stubs and know what their direct deposit is getting paid for. So, but if we had to have signatures on a Monday for part of the checks, or for just one board member, I think that would also work. But the other component of this is getting the checks that we send out, particularly to some of our utilities. We need to get those out timely, or we're subject to late fees and other kind of financial impacts and so forth. Do you have anything to add to that, LJ? I can move.
And then I would just highlight that, yes, the big thing is payroll. Now, maybe if we decided to combine and not worry about the payroll being signed off each time there's a payroll, because we get paid every other week, that maybe those together, it might work. But again, the timeliness of sending out the checks so that we don't miss the due dates, not only for utilities, but also like with fuel. We've had some issues in the past. If that doesn't get paid in a timely manner, then they cut off our fuel supply, which isn't good. And so the importance of having them go out in a timely manner is I guess, I think the biggest factor in that. But I would agree with Evan that if we were down to one signature that could be signed on those checks, but maybe the second board member just reviews everything so that we still have that checks and balances. They don't necessarily have to sign the checks, but it gets reviewed by a second board member. That might be a solution to that. I don't know, just thinking.
And could that review come a couple of days after the checks are distributed?
Probably most of the time, but sometimes it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Very true.
I would say as far as an auditor going through and looking at that, I definitely would like to see that review process done before the check is issued. But as Evan mentioned, you have payroll checks that are direct deposited. There is really no signing that needs to be done with those checks for that check to be issued. Those can be ratified or reviewed and looked at after the fact. So I don't see the payroll checks being a big concern or a big issue. I think the vendor checks are probably the one thing that you need to look at to make sure that you get those out timely, so that you don't have late fees or somebody doesn't say, hey, we're not delivering a product to you or whatever that is. I think payroll can be ratified after the fact because you have them as direct deposits.
So I'm wondering about setting a dollar limit, but maybe have some dollar limits for specific vendors that are higher, because it sounds like maybe that's one of the bottlenecks for approving this. Like with our fuel, maybe we could have a dollar limit that's specifically higher for, I forget what they're called now. And maybe others, so that we're accommodating the payment needs, but without loosening it more than necessary.
Right. That's what we're going to cut up though. So another thing just to point out too is that we've discussed this in the past is some of these recurring vendor payments, we migrate to an online bill pay platform with the same type of review cycle with the stamps, but just it would not have a physical check associated with it. So I'm not sure, and I'm kind of curious what Doug's thought what that would be. But as for these kind of routine, commonly recurring types of invoices that we're paying in an online bill pay type format through our Zion's banking account, you know, how is that? What are effective controls and ways, means and methods to go about paying bills in that fashion?
I think those, Evan, have the same criteria that everything else does, and I don't want the board to misunderstand anything that we are trying to convey to you as far as the auditing process is. Number one, you still have to review all the transactions, whether it's done before or whether it's done after. There needs to be documentation that the board has reviewed those expenditures, whether it's been before or after. So ultimately, when it gets right down to it, and that's why I posed the question to the board is, what do you feel comfortable with? Because you're the ones that have to document that you have reviewed these expenditures that come from the district. And that threshold, when it gets right down to it, can be $2,000. It can be $10,000 as far as having dual signatures on a check. It's where do you feel comfortable realizing that your internal controls are going to be affected by whatever dollar threshold you put on that. And also to make sure that you don't send something out that has not been reviewed or not been had proper authorization from the board. That's going to be the key to all of this. And could it happen? Yeah, probably could. But that's why we try to keep those internal controls as good as you can under your situation.
So it seems like we've talked this through a fair amount. If people have additional questions, please propose them. If people have an idea about how to move forward, either via postponing with direction or a specific motion, seems like now would be the time to make those.
I would recommend that we just stay where we're at for right now. I mean, if it becomes a real issue with two people signing checks, then we should look at it again. I think we should postpone this myself.
I agree.
So motion by Kevin and seconded by Diana. Was that what it was?
Sounds good to me.
It wasn't quite phrased that way, but I wasn't sure if it was a motion or not, but it sounds like it is. So I will accept it as such. Diane, would you please confirm that was the second?
Yes, I confirm.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Doug, for your
Thank you, Doug.
experience and advice.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate you.
Have a great board meeting.
Thank you.
See you.
Thanks.
So we will now put back on the table discussion of special events planning. Evan.
Yes, so a couple items to discuss here. I guess, you know, we had discussed this in the past regarding the old Spanish Trail Arena, and there was some discussion that as part of permitting these events, that there were fees built in to perhaps support recycling efforts or waste diversion at these events. So I guess that's one thing I'm curious if there has been any information obtained regarding what these special event fees include and what's associated with those, particularly at the arena, but there are several events that are throughout the county and city as well.
I don't have any information.
I think it would be good to meet with the event committee in the county and see what the process would be to have something like that put on the checklist for them to, you know, like we did with the COVID, you know, that there's, you know, for them to have this event, they have to, you know, how much would it cost for us to have a recycle bin out there for the event, and we pick it up. You know, they could say, well, this is part of the cost of renting OSTA. Would be I think that would.
Right, but I guess historically there was some information presented that there may be fees already built in to support recycling efforts. And that's kind of what I'm trying to understand, I suppose, as for this one subset of this topic.
I'll call Austin tomorrow. Should have done it today. And see, you know, where we could move with this, if we can get that instead of it just being part of the checklist, that it really truly happens, that the money doesn't, you know.
Well, so I guess leading further on this discussion item, so there was a recent powwow event. I forget who the hosts were at the OSTA, the arena, and they had called us asking for recycling. We quoted them, a larger event container, just like a closed roll-off container for recycling at $300, and they passed on it. So ultimately, I believe they got in touch with Moab Solutions, who put together a good effort for recycling and actually captured a lot of recyclables at this event. But in addition, I feel like these special events are unique in the fact that there's people coming from all over the country, sometimes over the world. And by simply having containers there, in my mind, is a very passive way to support recycling and waste diversion. So kind of.
How much do those containers cost? Could we have them at the OSTA all the time? Could we have one there and then they could just call when it needs to be picked up? And then you'd know it'd have to be picked up after big events, but there's something going on out there almost all the time.
Right, so we do have limited inventory in those kind of special events containers. That's something we could certainly look at. But what I was thinking, and even thinking, kind of further on in this conversation, and something I should have thought about earlier this year, is that I feel like this organization, especially as we move towards more education and outreach and more attempts to support waste diversion efforts, one, we should have had a booth at the the Market on Center Street events, promoting recycling, handing out information regarding the electronic waste and universal waste recycling days, and all the services we offer and how to enhance these types of recycling efforts. Just this weekend there was as Kevin mentioned, the Celtic Festival, the Scots on the Rocks, and I do feel like so we're going to replace those yellow recycling bins with the blue bins ultimately. But again, on these types of events, I think we should try to promote a more active presence and a more active kind of presence there to support recycling efforts, as opposed to just having a container here and there. So, but ultimately, I think what this equates to is trying to enhance our collaboration between the district and the county, the district and the city, the sustainability offices, so we can coordinate to plan these events and have effective placement and types of recycling and appropriate types of containers for these events. But also, as I was thinking about the concept that OSTA may be getting money to support recycling at these events, in my mind, a better way that we could look at this is, okay, say the city or county's getting money as part of their permitting fees. Ultimately, those permitting fees would be, I guess, established through coordination with this district, but then those funds that come to these events, which would probably be based on the area of the event or the anticipated number of attendees, those funds would be funneled to us, that we would actually provide planning, support, and execution for waste diversion efforts at these events. Perhaps even one person or people on site at these events. And thinking further about this as well, and next year, even though our financials are growing in complexity, excuse me, I'm thinking about actually creating a whole new class or department where we track our costs, revenues, and other staffing expenses in a separate department altogether. So this would include cash for cans at the recycling center. This would include the household hazardous waste events, any special events, even perhaps the Moab landfill voucher program. We would track and even identify where the monies are coming from. Maybe a portion of the funding we get from Grand County gets thrown into that budget. So these monies are being utilized to support special events related to waste diversion efforts in Grand County.
And the city of Moab. It sounds like we need to get the powers to be that are, that make these, that are enforcing and reviewing the events, and get something in place for next year.
So it seems like, I don't know about OSTA, but it seems like whether or not they have the adequacy of the recycling facilities, whether it's a permitted special event or not, seems like one issue. And then I was looking through the city code for the requirements for special events, and it doesn't appear that recycling is an explicit requirement. It seems like some folks that run events are inclined to do that. I don't know if all are, but it seems like with given the goals of this city, or at least the current city council and this entity, perhaps that could be more explicit.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't mention during my report is that the city sustainability department is updating or continuing the process of developing a final version of the sustainability plan. And Evan's participating in a focus group on that, as am I, on the sort of materials, which include solid waste management. So it seems like that's something that we could bring up, since special events are such a big part of this community.
Yes, agreed. And I mean, ultimately, I just feel there's a huge amount of room for improvements for these events. And you know, by enhancing our collaboration between you know, the county, the city, and other events planners, even the travel council, I think there could be large impacts. It's just, how do we justify financially, you know, providing more resources during these events if there's not money that's being kind of funneled through those events for those particular uses.
Evan, are you talking primarily about aluminum cans? What are you talking about? The single stream stuff too? Can you explain that a little bit? At these special events, would it just be the cans primarily, or is it the single stream stuff too?
Well, I think there's a lot. I mean, single stream is still recycling. It's still the same similar types of commodities. So I would imagine special events, the main things you would be generating would be probably number one would be plastic bottles. Secondly, maybe aluminum cans. Third, possibly glass. Right, but also, I think by trying to enhance this whole event planning and coordination would also be hopefully us reaching out and working with the food vendors and the other vendors at these events to help them identify and utilize sustainable kind of serving types of plates and so on and so forth, and you know, minimizing plates to begin with, or not using styrofoam and things like that. Things that are recyclable, like the solo cups, those red solo cups that you see so frequently, those are not recyclable in any recycling program. Those are notoriously very difficult, and even with the single stream, those all get landfilled regardless. And I recently found out, and I'm not sure if they're truly acceptable in recycling programs, but the manufacturer of like the ball jars, they've made a quote unquote recyclable and reusable aluminum cup that is shaped in the same fashion as one of those solo red cups as well. So I've not seen definitively if it's the same makeup or composition of straight up aluminum cans. And those are one thing, but they're also much more expensive than your traditional red solo cups as well too. So there's a lot of means and methods to reduce, reuse, and recycle. And this wouldn't be just recycling. This would be the whole gamut of reduction, you know, reuse, and all those types of things as well too. So.
Very good, thank you. I'm assuming that this would be along the lines that you were wanting to hire another employee that would be the outreach for this kind of stuff. Because yes, I think it's a great idea. It's perfect. And I think what I'm hearing you say is you're asking the county and the city to somehow, some way be abreast that the solid waste district wants to do this. We have a, you know, and it seems as if the city and the county want to do this. So I'm with Mary, somebody's got to get together up at the top and work this stuff out. And I support it.
Yeah, so, and as I've expressed to the county commission, a lot of the funding we get from the county, you know, mainly it goes to offset our impacts from tourism, but it also supports us in our programs and services that we provide year round, the MOAB voucher program, the household hazardous waste events, et cetera. And last I looked, the agenda for the county tomorrow, the budget officer's recommendation is to increase our allocation for 2022. So instead of us giving our traditional $400,000, the budget officer is recommending we get $500,000 for 2022, which right there financially justifies our ability to seek out and hire a full-time educational outreach coordinator and continue to enhance the programs and services that we provide as a holistic solid waste management provider. So things are looking good though on that front.
I certainly appreciate the focus. I sit on this board because I'm a recycler and I want it to happen in our community, and not the only reason, but I'm really strong and like to hear that this is something that's very important to you as the director, and I appreciate that.
So I guess between Mary and Kaylin, who would be the appropriate contacts that I could reach out to that support special events planning and who I could help to try to enhance our collaboration with?
For us, I would think, well, it involves more than just events. So Austin is the new director of the, you know, of the Travel Council and the, you know, economic development. I'd have to, you know, I think we'd want more than one person. I think this involves, because it's a philosophy that it would be nice if we could do a resolution or something that the county passes that says we support moving towards, because I can't remember what the percent you said, but we can put a resolution that we are going to actively try to pursue to get our diversion rate up to a certain percent. And then actively do that.
Right.
Because if we don't put a goal out there that, because it was really low, I remember it being very low compared to the rest of the nation. How can we do a better job of diversion? And then part of that would be the special events, but I can see just even in our staff, you know, you have your staff that's very concerned and follows through and uses the recycle things, but I'm shocked when I'll go buy a trash can in this county and there'll be an aluminum can in there. You know, but I think this point, it's part of it would be the events, whereas, but I think a resolution to try to move like this count, like, you know, when we're going to be diverting so much.
Right, yes, we were roughly 11, 12%. Most of the nation is roughly 30%, but it depends on what you analyze and include in your data set, right? So, but part of us, you know, the huge growth we've seen, obviously that's required some changes to our structure, but then what I've tried to identify with collaboration with other staff is that these new positions we're considering and evaluating bringing on will help to optimize and streamline our operations and ultimately getting someone whose sole job is education and outreach, which I think, given the county passes that financial funding for us in 2022, I think to me that is financially justified to bring that position on board. And then they start from a holistic perspective, working with the travel council, working with hotels and restaurants, working on events, things, and it can free up time to allow, not only myself to move forward some things, but Jessica, because she has so many kind of different hats she wears, to help her focus on programmatic stuff, media, etc. Work collaboratively with education outreach person, and then ultimately we advance the organization on a whole new level. But also what you're discussing, Mary, is as it relates to strategic planning. And that's something that this district also needs in a very critical way. And by freeing up our time and allowing staff to have more defined roles and to focus on, and especially for me to be able to focus on higher level kind of planning components, because right now I'm kind of, down on the ground dealing with a lot of just day-to-day things, which is fine, but I'm trying to identify relief for myself and all the other administrative staff where we could advance all these types of projects and goals, and getting a composting consultant in, and identifying and developing a composting plan. All these things that we want to do, they've just been hamstrung by the amount of work that we are all kind of required to do on a day-to-day basis.
So in terms of engaging with the city on special events, I feel like I want to talk to staff to figure out who they would want to assign and how they want to approach that, which I'm happy to do. I agree with Mary that framing this in the larger context of just setting a high level goal for where we want to go would be good. And then, but I certainly hear you that we need to be, or we would want to be strategic about it. And unfortunately, it seems like my impression from my readings about diversion efforts is that the larger the customer, like targeting large customers is the more efficient way to pick off some big chunks of divertible materials. And then as you get down to smaller customers, it takes more effort to get them to divert materials. And I think special event attendees are exemplify that in terms of getting the individual person to put their bottle in the right place, even though we see the end result in terms of overflowing trash cans of unsorted recyclables and solid non-recyclables. Unfortunately, those are people that then to a large extent leave the community, and hopefully they learn something, but then we have to start all over again with the next event. So I certainly want to remedy that, but I'm also aware that if we take a hard look at diversion, it might be easier to start with cardboard and big customers, unfortunately, even if we don't necessarily see that as much because it largely passes out of sight. So, but in any event, I'm supportive of the strategic effort, high level goals, and I'll ask about engaging on special events.
Well, so watching what comes into this transfer station is pretty eye-opening as to the amount of wasted material and a lot of cardboard and just people that are not doing their part to recycle. But as it comes to special events, so I do feel like there are means and methods to ultimately enhance the ease of recycling, which has to do in my mind with the effective placement, logistics, and pairing of the receptacles that are appropriate, that are easily identifiable and appropriately labeled as well. So there are ways to certainly make large enhancements, and that was kind of one of the things that I discussed with the city a few months ago about Swanee Park, is getting permanent receptacles that are paired and easily identifiable as to what goes in each container.
Very good.
This is a big discussion. I will contact some people from the county and email you back or call you as to how we could move forward in accomplishing this. Because I think we want to look at short-term things we can do, but then also add a very long-term goal.
Sounds great.
All right. Any other thoughts from the board? Or Evan, did you have more on this topic you wanted to discuss?
No, not necessarily, but I do feel like it would be important for us to kind of track separately in a separate kind of category on our financials for special events. I'm going to try to budget that out next year. It's not going to be perfect. The budget's going to be actually incredibly complex. That's in my mind. I'm going to try to get something very high level for the October meeting with a more defined draft budget for approval in November, adoption in December, obviously. But I think that would really help us, and we can start even tracking staff time, advertising, all the things that go into these special events, so we can kind of see where those costs kind of come in and what they are, costing us from a financial standpoint. So
Great, that'll be good to see, and I'm sympathetic with the complexity. So good luck.
thank you.
All right. That concludes our open session. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I make a motion to go into closed session.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Kevin. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. It is 5:34 p.m. This is a discussion of character, professional confidence, or physical mental health of an individual or individuals. So as I recall, this isn't recorded. Is that
Stop
correct?
recording or record it?
No, this isn't recorded.
Right.
We do have to have a paper trail, though. That when we come in to sign checks, we should sign,
Yeah,
the chair needs to sign that we went into closed session and we discussed this. It just needs a paper trail.
yep.
I wonder if Jessica can pass over the, get the term, but to Kaylin or myself or something. I'm not sure.
Hosting.
Yes, the host.
Yes, she should terminate recording and then, or